The tariff, Mark Holloway had never been afraid of numbers before. Numbers built his business, tightened supply. Numbers let him predict market trends, cut deals, and play the game of global trade. But tonight, as he stared at his computer screen, numbers had turned against him. Importation restriction, new tariffs in effect. All goods from China subject to 500% increase. His throat tightened. That wasn't a tax. That was a death sentence. His company had millions in shipments stuck at the port of Los Angeles. If he couldn't afford the new tariff, they'd be seized. He could already hear the phones ringing, his clients, his suppliers, his warehouses, everyone demanding answers. But there were none. A notification flashed across his screen. Jim Callahan docs. Mark hesitated before picking up. Jim, static crackled. A long pause. Then, Mark, you need to get down here. Now. Something in his friend's voice sent a chill down his spine. What's going on? The line went dead. Mark grabbed his keys and headed for the docks. The port of Los Angeles. It was past midnight when Mark pulled up to the shipping yard. The place should have been alive with movement cranes unloading, trucks hauling cargo under the glare of floodlights. Instead, an unnatural stillness blanketed the air. Rows of shipping containers stood in eerie silence, stretching into the dark like abandoned monoliths. The wind carried the distant clang of metal, the occasional creak of shifting steel. Jim was waiting near a cluster of containers marked with bright red tags. Seized. Mark stepped out of his car, the night air thick with salt and something rotting. Jim barely acknowledged him, his face pale beneath the flickering floodlights. What's going on? Mark asked. Jim took a long drag of his cigarette, exhaling smoke through his nose. His hands were shaking. You ever hear stories about what happens when people don't pay? Mark frowned. What are you talking about? Jim didn't answer. He just nodded toward the containers. Mark followed his gaze and froze. The nearest container had deep gashes in the steel claw marks. The red tag fluttered weakly in the wind, barely clinging to the surface. What the hell? Mark whispered. Jim held out a tablet. His knuckles were white around the edges. Look at the last inspection log. Mark took the device. His hands were cold as he scrolled through the recorded entries. Inspection log 11:40 to PM. Cargo. Unlisted. Origin. Unknown. Status. Seized. Inspector notes. Unusual noises detected. Possible stowaways. Opening now. The next entry was corrupted. Broken text. Garbled symbols. And then, opened. ERROR. 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 The log ended. Mark felt the weight of silence press down on his chest. That's not possible, he murmured. Someone must have. A sound broke the night. A metallic groan. The air thickened. Mark's eyes snapped to the container. The door was ajar. Jim stumbled back. No, they locked it. They'd a whisper. Soft, nearly lost in the wind. Tariff. The breath caught in Mark's throat. Then, movement. A shadow shifted inside the container, limbs unfolding in a way that wasn't human. Something crawled forward. Jim bolted. Mark was too stunned to move. The thing inside the container stepped into the light. It was tall, its frame twisted and unnatural. Patches of scorched fabric and raw metal clung to its body like remnants of machinery. Its fingers' long, rusted blades twitched at its sides. But it was the eyes that paralyzed Mark. Twin burning embers set deep in a hollowed, skeletal face. They flickered like molten steel, locked onto him with an intelligence that made his stomach twist. A tremor rolled through the ground. Poe. The whisper became a guttural scream. The thing lunged. Mark snapped back to reality. He turned and ran. Behind him, metal shrieked as the thing tore through another container. More whispers rose from the dark. More things crawled out. 1, 2, dozens. Their bodies groaned like bending steel. Their hollow voices carried on the wind. The tariff had been applied, and something had come to collect. Epilogue. By dawn, the port of Los Angeles was under lockdown. The official reports blamed it on a containment breach. Details were scarce. No one answered questions. But Mark knew the truth. The tariffs hadn't just stopped trade. They had opened something, and now the world had a debt to pay.